guys, so this is just going to be a quick video on polytonality and polymodality. Now, polytonality, as the name suggests, means many tonics or many tonal centers, and it generally means playing two or more keys or scales at once. For example, you could have a chord progression in the key of C major, like a 2-5-1, and play a melody over that chord progression in the key of E flat major. Right, so the chord progression was obviously in the key of C major, being a 2-5-1. And the melody was obviously in E flat major, because I started on the E flat and I outlined the E flat major arpeggio before doing a little bit of improvisation on the E flat major scale and then finishing on the E flat again. Now, polymodality generally means playing two different scales which have the same tonic. Like, for example, if I played a 2-5-1 in the key of C major or in C Ionian and played a melody in the key of C Aeolian. So then the tonal center of both the chords and the melody is the note C. Right, and C Aeolian or natural minor has the exact same notes as E flat major, only a different root note, a different tonal center. But if you played two different modes rather than major or minor scales that had different tonal centers, so like C Dorian and F Dorian, then you could probably also call that polymodal. Now, jazz improvisation is very often polymodal. So if you had a 2-5-1 in the key of C, often you would improvise using the C Lydian mode over the C major 7 chord. And that's essentially an example of polymodality or bimodality, that is, two different modes. But occasionally you come across actual written down melodies of songs that are polytonal. A good example is George Russell's All About Rosie, which is a big orchestral jazz piece. Or another one is the introduction to Herbie Hancock's Tell Me a Bedtime Story. So the melody of that song goes like this. So it starts on the A and then goes down to the G sharp, F sharp, E, C sharp, A, C sharp, B. So a melody starting on the A and having a G sharp, F sharp, and C sharp is quite obviously in the key of A major. In fact, the melody more or less just goes down the A major scale. However, when we look at the chords, we find that the first chord is a G major 7 sharp 11. Now that's the 4 chord of the key of D major, and in fact we see that the key signature has 2 sharps, so it's in the key of D major. So right here we have an example of polytonality, where the melody is in A major, but the chords are in D major. Now if this melody, instead of going A, G sharp, F sharp, E, went A, G sharp, G natural, F sharp, E, you could have argued that that G sharp was just a passing note and therefore not important to the harmony, and therefore this wasn't really polytonality because it's just a passing note on your way to a note in the scale, a diatonic note. However, because the melody begins on an A and does not hit the G natural, it's reasonable to assume that this melody is actually in the key of A major. So that sounds quite nice, and the reason is because those two scales are very closely related. There's only one note difference between them. D major has a G natural, whereas A major has a G sharp. So the closer related two scales are, that is, the closer they are on a cycle of fifths chart, the more notes they have in common and the more pleasant they will sound. Whereas naturally, the less related two keys are, that is, the further away you go on the cycle of fifths, the more jarring and dissonant it'll sound. For example, playing G major over a chord progression in C major sounds quite pleasant because there's only one note difference. Whereas playing G flat major over a chord progression in C major sounds terrible. Cool, so keep an eye out for polytonality and polymodality when you're learning your next jazz song, because it does come up occasionally, especially in your more modern jazz.